I'm here in the great Australian state of Tasmania, and as you can see, there's really no shortage of natural beauty here. And another thing that there's really no shortage of, and that's great whiskey. That's because there's an incredible artisanal distilling movement going on. It's been going on for the past 2 decades, and one of the great legends in that movement is Peter Bignell of Belgrove Distilling. He is probably one of the greenest distillers all over Australia, and of course when you've got this much natural glory, you really don't want to mess with it.
It's sort of got a little bit of the Scottish feel about it. A lot of the early settlers here in Tasmania were Scottish. I'm of Scottish descent, and certainly when you get them to the high country here, it's bits of it look really like Scotland, and it's just it's got that same feel about it. And anyone who's drinks Scotch whiskey, when you've been to Scotland, the Tasmania parts of Tasmania certainly got that same feel about it, and I guess that probably got quite a bit to do with it. It's an old commercial tumble dryer. Line it out with some stainless steel mesh. I put just fresh grain in here, and it's got a sprinkler in it and a timer, and it starts up and it malts the grain in about 2.5 days. And then if I want to peat smoke it, I light a peat fire underneath it and peat smoke it. And the peat comes from, there's a little lump of the peat there. That comes from our family farm up the northeast coast of Tasmania, out near Waterhouse. Yep, so this little tumbler here will produce enough malt for one batch through the ladder tun. Only about 20% of the grain is malted, the rest of it's unmalted. Whereas malt whiskies, Scotch whisky, Tasmanian malt whiskies are all 100%, whereas I've got only 20% malted grain, the rest of it's unmalted, which is like Irish, and quite a lot of American distilleries do it similar. They don't use 100% malted grain. The distillery itself is an old horse stables, so no carbon to build this place. There was almost nothing I did. A little bit of concrete in 2 of the bays here, but the rest of it I just left it alone. So we've got a mash here that we started today. Now rye is terribly hard to lauter. People just don't. I don't think anybody else even tries it. Because it's just so slow to get the wort out of the grain, the sugary water. What happens is it actually takes me 2 days. We did a malt whiskey yesterday, and that took about 3 hours. I think maybe 4 hours for everything, the whole run, and this takes me 2 days. So what I have to do, what happens here is that you see the top of that is there's plenty of liquid there. We just got to drain out, but it's plugged up against the filter in the bottom. And there's the little bucket here, pumps out of here. So it nearly stopped running there because the filter's just plugged. So regularly I have to keep scraping this. So I just scrape the plug of hard stuff off the bottom, which there it is. That's a big plug that was blocking the filter. There's the still. So that is just a copper still that I built myself.
Oh, really?
I got bought some copper sheet. I've actually got someone to cut it out for me on a computer cutter, and then I folded it all up and welded it up.
Wow.
So at the moment I've only got 1 still, so I've got to do the wash runs and the spirit runs and that, so I do 2 runs. It is, you might see here, look up here, no line arm. Normally stills got a line arm and condenser out here. This here is actually the condenser. So when the still's running, that's cold. It's got just a jacket of cold water, just a very thin layer of cold water there. Steam rises up, condenses on the inside of it's just a little big piece of shell and tube just sitting on top of the still. Condenses there, trickles down the inside, a little gutter catches it and drips out the outlet here. This is the barrel room. But most of them had Tasmanian malt whiskies in them first. And before that, they may have had sherry, port, bourbon, I don't know. Well, I do know some of them, but not all of them. But I really, at the moment, I'm trying to go mainly Tassie malt whiskies first, because a lot of Australian whisky drinkers aren't rye drinkers, they're malt drinkers. And if there's a hint of malt in my rye, then I'm hoping I'll bring a few more of them across to drinking rye. Ginger beer is to mix with the white rye.
Okay.
And the leftovers, I distill it. But it's got so popular now, people like it so much, I've actually had to start making ginger beer just to distill. That's apple hatchet, which is the apple brandy, but it's not really an apple brandy because brandy has to be in a barrel for 2 years. There's the white rye, that's just their unaged rye whiskey. So that's the aged one. In Australia, it has to be in a barrel for at least 2 years before you can use the term whisky. The same as in the States, is straight whiskies has to be 2 years. There's an oak whisky. I only did a little 50-litre barrel of that. Turned out really nice. It just sold like hotcakes, that stuff. Peated rye whisky, a little bit the same, just an experiment to see if peat smoke and rye would go together. I didn't know if they would or not. There's the POM I was talking about, the distilled apple cider diluted with apple juice and then aged. Crouton vodka. The big festival we had down in Hobart, one of the stalls next to me had mucked up their bread order and had a lot of bread left over at the end of the festival. And they asked me if I wanted to feed my sheep on it. So I brought it home, the sheep didn't want it. So I grabbed all the rye bread out of it and I boiled it up with some potatoes they gave me and fermented it and triple distilled it, the vodka. So there's only made a dozen bottles of it, but it was just for the fun of it, just to say it can be done. I've done that. And then another thing that I mixed with the white rye is a coffee liqueur.
Oh, wow.
White rye to make an espresso martini. Really nice espresso martinis, so there's that rye flavour through them. And anyway, I decided to actually make up my own coffee liqueur with the rye already in there. And yeah, that's a really nice. It's a bit sickly sweet to my taste buds, but yeah, a lot of people really love that. But then it's really designed to make espresso martinis with. And that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different products.